I'm going to compare head of security and a coach. Are there similar jobs/roles which staff have to perform to meet legislations? Yes, there are similar roles that staff with different jobs have to do, like risk assessments. For example, a coach has to do a risk assessment before every training session. They do this to make sure participants are at minimal risk while taking part in the session. They also have to put control methods in. This helps take away any hazards or really minimises the hazards that participants could face during a training session. Likewise, the head of security has to do a risk assessment for each home game. This is in case there is any accident or emergency during the game. They also have to do it depending on the fans. Some games are higher risk than others. Some games you won't need as many stewards for away fans, as there hasn't been history with the home fans, whereas other teams you need a lot more stewards as there is bad history between them and the home fans, and they will need to think about how they let them out after the game, how many stewards are needed around them, and home fans to stop fighting from happening. Also, if you need the police present, if you need some or a lot of police, and for the high risk teams, police on horseback. Both of these assessments are done for the safety for the people at the stadium or taking part in the training session. Although these risk assessments are different, safety is the main objective in both of them. Who is responsible for ensuring legislation and legal factors are carried out? At Brighton, head of security would be in charge in making sure that legislations and legal factors are carried out. He is in charge of everything health and safety, and everyone making sure legislations and legal factors are carried out. Heads of security will need to make sure that all staff have the right equipment they need. For example, high-vis coats. This would be heads of security's job to make sure every steward has this or any other equipment they would need to carry out their job right. Heads of security is also in charge of informing all departments that staff need to have the correct safety equipment. They need to make sure that legislations and legal factors are followed by the whole club. Heads of security would also need to make sure that everyone works at the Amex or working in a safe working environment. He would need to make sure that he does a risk assessment to make sure they are all safe. For the coach, although there are legislations that they are responsible for doing, so like doing a risk assessment before a training session, the overall responsibility is on heads of security, so he's in charge of everything, all making sure that they're all kept by all the people below him. So although a coach is responsible for doing that, he would have to be the one to enforce and make sure that's happening. So overall it is him. Who is punishable for not ensuring the legislation and legal factors are met? Everyone that is employed by Brighton Hove Albion will need to be fully trained in their area. For example, stewards will need to know all about health and safety measures and procedures in the job before they become fully trained and started working. This would be a job for head of security to make sure that this happens, and if something was to happen, then they would be responsible for this. It's Brighton's responsibility to make sure that everyone they employ has the right qualifications they need to do the job, keeping the legislation and legal factors that they need to keep to. For example, a level 1 coach can be employed by Brighton, but they won't be able to train everyone. At the academy, the centre director needs to have at least one A licence, to be in charge. If they don't have this coaching badge, then they'll not be able to get the job as centre director. By being at a high level of coaching, you gain higher level of first aid. If you're in charge of the whole academy and an accident happens, you would most probably be have the highest award of first aid. You'll be the most qualified to do first aid. They may need to perform a life-saving action, which is something that you wouldn't necessarily learn in your lower coaching badges unless you've done extra first aid training for yourself. By having someone in charge that has a very high level of first aid, this could save someone's life. If someone only had a level 2 coaching badge and they were in charge, then they wouldn't be able to perform the same life-saving action that someone of a high level coaching badge would be able to. If the legislation and legal factors aren't met, it would be Brighton that would be punishable for this, but because but the head of it would also fall onto the head of security, because their job is to make sure that everyone's following these legislations and legal factors. Like in health and safety, it's part of their job. So although Brighton would be punishable, Brighton would most probably then do their own investigation to see who within Brighton that actually specifically falls on, because Brighton employ people to do this. So although Brighton would be punished, Brighton would most probably then go within their own team and see who was punishable or who was actually at fault for this not happening. Which job roles require specific training to meet the legislations and legal factors? So both head of security and coach would need specific training to meet the legislation and legal factors. For example, a coach would need a CRB check to make sure they can work with children. Everybody who works with children needs to have a CRB check, so this is very standard legislation, and if you don't have one, then you will not be able to work with them and get paid. They also need to have a coaching badge to be paid as a coach. Although someone can train people without a coaching badge, you can't actually be a coach. You can only be an assistant coach. So to actually be the number 1 coach, you need to have at least a level 1 to make sure they're qualified as a coach. This will also then give them a basic first aid training, because if they're the main coach in the session and someone gets hurt and they don't have a coaching badge, the chances are they won't have any sort of first aid training, which means they wouldn't actually be able to deal with the accident properly. So this is why it's really important to have a level 1, not just for like the football side of it, but for like the health and safety side of it. Some of the qualifications are needed by both coach and head of security. For example, first aid, whether head of security would not only need head of security would need to know again a higher level of first aid than a coach maybe need to know, but they both need to know this. They both need to have good understanding and example, but especially the heads of security will need to know it better. For example, they would like need training in case there was a fire. So if there was a fire at the Amex, the head of security would need to know how to deal with this, because not only are they having to deal with the getting people out, but they're dealing with a lot more people getting out. Like if it's a stadium full of people, there's 31,000 plus staff that head of security needs to get out. Whereas for a coach, it's just the amount that would be in the coaching session, which would most probably be under 20 people, including all the staff. The qualifications that they need to become a head of security. So this is like the training that they would need. They could have something in stadium and events management. They need a CRB check and at least a level 2 NVQ to make sure they have the right health and safety training you need to be qualified for the job as head of security. There are also different qualifications that could qualify you for that job but aren't necessary. And then for a coach, you need at least a level 1 FA coaching badge, but higher would be recommended, because the higher coach you are, the higher level badge you are, the better coach you are, so the better chance you have of working there. And you need a CRB check to make sure that you can work with children.